Always has to be a shot at somebody.
No.
They're never clean.
They have to run. That's the only shot they have.
They do it for 82 games. We're about to find out.
He already has shown what he's capable of.
Did surprise me. I thought we were going to hang in there.
This makes me think that we do need to be humble.
I actually think you're the only one who deserved that.
Hey, Bobby Manning here, and the Celtics fall to 0-3 against the Pistons. Sherrod Blakely alongside. We got Noah Dalzell in Detroit, and there's going to be a panic meter show, Sherrod. I'm not going to be shaving anytime soon, it looks like.
Looks like you're going to be comfortable with that, Bobby, because I ain't going nowhere no time soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of worrisome stuff coming out of this one, and hopefully Noah can bring some positivity from Detroit, some silver linings, because this just doesn't look great right now, Sherrod. And where else do we start but the defensive rebounding? We talked about in the preseason. Missoula went on a rant after one of the losses, I think, against Toronto, during another particularly uncompetitive showing on the boards. It's been a factor in every single game so far, particularly in the New York game. And then in this one, you can probably come away from it, Sherrod, saying that if they just rebounded a little better, they almost certainly win this game. They led by 17 early, squandered it pretty quickly, got back into it after falling behind by about 13 early in that fourth quarter. But every single time they pulled within 4, pulled within 3, they were pretty much giving up a putback every single time.
Yeah. And you can't win in this league when you're doing that, particularly against a team like Detroit that has such great size, physical, athletic guys in that front court. You have to put a body on body at all times, and that just didn't happen. And even at times when they did that, guys like Duren just literally reached over and took the Celtics lunch money right off the top of their heads and kept giving them possession after possession after possession to score. And Joe, I think coming into the season, there was a significant amount of concern about how this team would be defensively. Could they rebound? Where would they get scoring from? And it seems that most of the concerns, they are not quite as bad as we thought they were, except for one area, and that's defensive rebounding. They are horrible defensive rebounding. I mean, this may be one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NBA when it comes to that particular category, because they are literally getting their ass kicked in that area. And Bobby, to your point, they win this game if they can keep that margin relatively competitive, particularly down the stretch. I thought they did everything defensively that you're supposed to do. You contested shot, closed out, did everything except seal the deal, which is getting the defensive rebound. And I'm looking at this roster and I'm looking at the guys they have. I don't know if this is one of those things where over time they'll get better. This is really going to be very challenging for Joe to schematically figure out how can I get these guys to be better rebounders. Scheme-wise, it's difficult because, again, rebounding is one of those things where I don't think it's necessarily all effort and no technique, but if you don't have size, you damn well better have elite technique and strategies to try to scheme your way to mask what is clearly this team's biggest weakness.
Yeah, and they managed on opening night. I'm looking back at some of the other box scores so far through the first 3 games here, and it was 10-10 on the offensive glass in the opener against Philadelphia. Again, you lead by 13 in that game. You have to close it out. 21 second chance points, though. So that's a lot of offensive rebound. I mean, that's got to be pretty much every single offensive rebound going in the basket to have that kind of efficiency. New York, obviously, the other night, 21 offensive rebounds for the Knicks. That turns into 21 second chance points. So that's probably a more manageable percentage if you're Boston. 5 of 17 the Knicks shot in that game after the offensive rebound. So that didn't kill them that night. But tonight, I mean, it was going in the basket every single time that they were grabbing it. Detroit was, and they were put back dunks. They were going to the free throw line, which isn't accounted here necessarily either. I mean, their efficiency in putting those back, particularly late. We just counted at 8 second chance points down the stretch with 3 minutes to go. When you got to that 2:59 point, Pritchard had just driven to the basket to pull them within 3. They got a stop on the first Harris layup attempt. Duren grabs the rebound, misses it. Thompson goes up and finishes it with the dunk. So you go back 5 there. Hauser misses a 3 the other way. Duren brings it back. Cade misses a layup. Thompson puts it right back and in. So that little sequence right there, you go within 3, and then 30 seconds later, a minute later, you're down 7 again. And that's pretty much the ball game right there.
Yeah, if you seal the deal on each of those possessions, which means defending and getting the rebound, you're looking at a chance to take the lead potentially. And that's, the thing that this was what we're seeing, Bobby, is we knew coming into the season that the margins for this team were thin, that they're really were going to have to play pretty good basketball pretty much every night to have a shot at winning. And they're making the kind of mistakes that we've seen they could easily make up for because they were so deep and talented. I mean, they could have a night where maybe they missed 2 or 3 assignments as far as blocking out and give up offensive rebounds, but they'd come back and they'd force a turnover, or they would lock down in that particular area. They would find a way to shore up whatever holes that particular game would manifest, but they don't have that ability now. The margins are so thin. When Jaylen Brown scores on a driving layup that brings you within like 5 points, you need to keep him in there versus taking him out to give him an extra minute on the bench before the fourth quarter. If Pritchard is wide open for a corner or for a 3, and Hugo passes up a 3 to get it to Peyton, he's got to knock that down. There were so many little moments like that throughout this game where if they simply did the one thing that most of them are expected to do, this probably is a different game. Instead of being up by 17 in the first half, that lead might be up to 20 or 25. And instead of down a stretch where you're come within a field goal and you're just a defensive stop and a bucket away from taking over, or at least putting yourself in position to take over, you can find yourself down by 7 because you can't get an offensive rebound or you can't get a defensive rebound to save your life, it felt like. And that's the frustrating part about this team. They're doing a lot of things that I think are good. But 1 or 2 things that they're not finishing are literally the difference between them winning and losing games. And we said from the very beginning, Bobby, that the margins are thin with this team. And we're seeing that play out in real time, watching them play.
Checking on the chat a little bit here. It looks like a lot of people want to see them sign a rebounded. The general sentiment, and this, we'll get to the big picture, Sherrod, after the 0-3 start here. But a lot of fans are jumping ship fast here, like either happy that they wanted to see a tank season and it's starting to turn into that in their eyes, or not happy with what's going on right here, which is a acceptable response, obviously, to an 0-3 start here. They led by 13 on opening night. They led by 17 early tonight. Obviously, that can turn fast when you do it in the first quarter, but they blew it pretty quickly, almost before the end of the first quarter there. What was the score at the end of the first?
It was much closer. They were at half they were down by 2, which was crazy after the way they played.
They were up 9 still at the end of the first. So they lost 8 points off the lead by the end of the first, and they lost the lead completely, obviously later in the second quarter. So it was a strong first half showing, and the beginning of this game, you finally saw them capitalize on the pressure they want to play with, forcing turnovers, a nice block from Hugo too, who got a spot start in this game, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But you saw the makings of what a Celtics win looks like in 2026. And I would say I have 2 big concerns out of this one. One, you started that great and played that well and still lost. 2, the Pistons did a lot of their work with Cade Cunningham off the floor. And I'm going to pull up what it ended up being. He was a +0 in this game, and obviously they won by 6. So they were +6 with Cade off the floor, and the Celtics played them even with Cade on the floor. So that's concerning that the Pistons bench effectively beat you in this one. The rebounding issue doesn't seem to be getting any better. You're mixing and matching lineups and still not finding answers necessarily to your issues here. And so, through 3 games, what am I at here? Like maybe 20%. This is good. This looks great. This is promising. I like the system. I like some of the things they're doing here. But I'm probably now at 80%. Ooh, there's a lot of holes here. This is bad. They're not doing a great job with this. So coming out of last game, I was still fairly optimistic that it was, still a little shooting variance. They're still locked in on the little things they need to do here. But, if John and Jimmy were here, who were both lower on this team than both of us, Sherrod, they'd be saying this is just who they are. And I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but 0-3 is good evidence of that.
Yeah, I'm not there yet because, I just think that there's way too much time for things to gradually get better. And again, it's going to be an uphill fight for them to get back to, forget about getting to 500 or winning or anything like that. Just getting an identity. I think that's
they don't have any identity.
Right. And that's a problem, because when you think, like, for example, and again, different team, but obviously, the Indiana Pacers, they spent time trying to figure out what their identity was. They played faster. They didn't have great size. They weren't a great rebounding team. So they played at a pace that ultimately became how they were able to establish an identity and then figure out how to win with that identity. And that's where the Celtics are at now. They still haven't figured out what their identity is going to be. Are they going to be a team that's going to play fast? And if you play fast, you've got to have guys who are athletically gifted enough to be able to rebound, play bigger than their position, for example. And they don't have that. And the guys that are actually playing the position they're supposed to are not playing that position very well. There are just too many non-big men who are dominating them. I mean, when Tobias Harris is getting offensive rebounds, and Thompson is just a physical freak, so I can't even put him in a category. Him and his brother are just on a different level and stratosphere. But there's so many other guys in this Detroit game. We saw in the Knicks game, and we saw obviously against the Sixers, that are giving them problems in terms of rebounding that shouldn't be. And I don't think there is a clear fix other than to go out and find a guy who can do that. And I don't know if this team has, frankly, just the financial stomach to do that. And the other thing too, and you brought this up, where as far as fans, some fans are thinking, oh, it's great, they're tanking, or oh, I'm pissed that they're getting their butts kicked night in, night out. They're trying to win games. I don't think there's absolutely no question. They are trying to win games. When you see Hugo out there, you're thinking, oh, well, maybe they're trying to tank just to give the young guys play. No, Hugo's one of the few guys that actually plays, for the most part, the way Joe Mazzulla wants them, from an intensity and from an effort.
And Jaylen dropped 40 today. Credit him too, as the chat guy says here.
Yeah. I mean, Jaylen had a great. Like I said, if you were to put together a laundry list of the positives and negatives to take away from this game, there are definitely more positives than negatives. But the negatives that exist are big. They're big. Really,
good
really
way to
big.
describe it.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if there is a one solution, elixir that Joe Mazzulla can come up to make this better. I just think that they're just going to have to keep grinding away and figuring out how can we get a little bit better in terms of defensive rebounding the ball, because they're doing a lot of good things defensively. They're just not sealing the deal, and you seal the deal when you get the rebound.
That was the story of the game tonight. We're going to talk a lot about rebounding. We're going to talk about some other things as well. Big picture. Noah's on the ground in Detroit, so I'm super curious to see what the mood is in that locker room after an 0-3 start here. It was down after the New York game, but still that hope of we're close. We think we're about to turn the corner here. We like certain things we're doing. That was the general sentiment there, even though they didn't feel great about the 0-2 start. I'd have to imagine, I'm definitely curious to see what Joe's demeanor is after this one, as he's held it together and kept it cool for the most part to this point. This one, I'd have to imagine would irk him, given some of the things that we're talking about ailing them here. Before we continue, I want to shout out one of our sponsors, Omaha Steaks. And the holiday season's coming up. It's a great time to head over to Omaha Steaks ahead of, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, big eating time coming up around all the holidays that are looming here as October comes to an end. So from everyday dinners and effortless entertaining to unforgettable gifts, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience. Enjoy USDA certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, love those, cozy and convenient comfort meals, and so much more. And now during their early Black Friday sale, get 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with the promo code PATRIOTS. Yes, even here on the Garden Report, it's Patriots, PATRIOTS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. And high quality is the big thing here. You're getting great stuff to your door, burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, delectable desserts. And this is a family-owned company with over 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. It's the perfect time to shop for the best deals. Plus, orders placed by 6 p.m. ship the next day. It does turn around fast. I got mine very quickly when I ordered my Black Friday box a couple weeks ago. You can save it in the freezer. You can make it right away. Whatever you need, Omaha Steaks has unrivaled quality and variety, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. So save big with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their early Black Friday sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code PATRIOTS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com. Promo code PATRIOTS at checkout. Again, check that out. Now, we have Joe from Detroit who just finished up talking. Before we get to that, this was him the other day, so we'll get to what he said tonight in just a second. Noah's sending that over. This is what he said the other day about the rebounding, and I found this interesting, Sherrod.
Again, with the rebounding, we have to combat it in three ways. We have to be as physical as we can rebounding. We have to get offensive rebounds, and we have to force more turnovers. So it's a three-thing approach to getting that. There were moments of physicality defensively. We can be better at that. And then we got to combat it with offensive rebounding and us forcing turnovers and us not turning it over. I think if you look at those four categories, defensive rebounding, offensive rebound, forcing turnovers, not turning it over, we probably have a better chance at controlling 3 out of the 4 of those with our effort and our ability to control those things. And so we got to fight for those.
So I don't know if you see that differently, Sherrod. He pretty much said that we might not be able to rebound at all. So we have to really dominate the turnover battle, the shot attempt battle, which obviously goes hand in hand with the rebounding, and of course the other big margin, the free throws,
right,
which are another big loss from this game here, obviously 36-24. Did a little bit of a better job with it late. Jaylen got aggressive, but that one's tough because they're not very good at generating free throws either, and they fouled a ton to start this year. So yes, they're bad at rebounding. Yes, they've done a good job at forcing turnovers, so you can say like, all right, that might be somewhere we can make up for the lack of rebounding. But teams are still going to get to the free throw line against them, especially off of rebounds. They fouled a lot off those offensive rebounds tonight. So I mean, that's tough, right? To look at it this early and say, yeah, we might just not be able to rebound.
Yeah, the one thing he said that I thought was interesting was he talked about the physicality. And being physical is not necessarily you don't have to have big, strong, the Xavier Tillman, Shaquille O'Neal types of the world to be a physical team. And I think that's the one thing where the Celtics – they have to figure out who are the guys that can play with a consistent level of physicality. Because the turnovers, I think they've done a pretty decent job in that regard. I think their defense has done a good enough job to where they're getting enough from that particular phase of play to where they should be able to win some games and be competitive. But again, the physicality, I just don't think it's there. I think that they've got too many guys that are playing more finesse than physical out there, and just the ability to simply put body on body. That's a lot of what rebounding comes down to, having the right proper technique, getting to the right places and spaces when you need to be there. And the thing that everyone that I have come across in the NBA tells me about rebounding is you do your dirty work early. You do the dirty work early so that when that ball leaves the fingertips, you're already in a space and place where you can do something on the boards and help your team. And there just doesn't seem to be enough of that. Guys don't seem to have either the physical tools or the defensive rebounding instincts to get to where they need to be before other folks get there. They don't have the ability to sell calls. I mean, if Duran is coming over your back, you might want to be able to sell that he's coming over your back if you're getting in position. But the problem was that a lot of times when he got offensive rebounds, he wasn't coming over their backs because they weren't in position to rebound when that ball went in the air. So there's a lot of stuff that, as Joe Mazzulla goes back and looks at the film from this game, there's a lot of stuff they can clean up. But and I don't think it's something that is an easy tweak here and there. I think that it's going to have to be, as I said earlier, it's going to have to be a gradual process where they get a little bit better every game, every quarter, to the point where maybe they can at some point by the end of the season be respectable when it comes to rebounding. But right now, they're just not good. They're just not good at all.
This is funny here. Revenge tour against the Celtics. Hopefully he's looking to destroy them. That is the feeling. Like when I'm around friends and stuff and fans of other teams so far, it's like, all right, here you go. Enjoy this because you were kicking everybody else's ass for all those years.
Exactly. And there's no question that's going to happen. I mean, I think there's going to be a game or two, maybe even more than that, where a team is going to be absolutely manhandling the Celtics, and there's going to be a point in the game where they could just basically, just ease off the gas and walk away, and then you're going to see a guy raising up for a three-pointer when the team's up by 50, and he'll do it early in the shot clock or something like that. So teams are looking for payback for sure.
A lot of blame for Peyton in here as he gets off to a slow start this season. I thought he was decent down the stretch, turned it around, finished 8 of 16. He hasn't shot well from 3 yet, though.
No, but this was his best game of the season, I think. He got off to another slow start, and I made reference to earlier, just a moment in the game where it turned into a 6-point play where Jaylen Brown penetrated, he kicked it to Hugo in the corner. Hugo looked like he was going to shoot, but then he saw Peyton to his left, swung it to him. Peyton had a wide open 3. It was the right basketball play to make. Peyton missed a shot. 10 seconds later, Detroit hits a 3. And again, it's been that kind of start to the season for Peyton. I don't know whether it's the fact that he's starting and that's taking a little bit more out of him in terms of what he can do from a physical standpoint, or whether he's just going through one of those funks. I mean, remember, we've seen this before from Peyton Pritchard, where he would go through a 3, 4, 5, 6 game stretch where he just couldn't make anything. And then he would gradually he'd get back on track. And then he'd have maybe 2 or 3 games where he just can't miss. And then at the end of the season, all things, taken into account, he had a good year. I think there's plenty of time for him to do that, but he needs to start making the open shots. I'm not concerned about him anything other than making the majority of the open shots, because he's getting a pretty good amount of those looks now, which I'm surprised, frankly, that the looks he's getting are as good as they've been, and he's just not knocking them down.
Yeah, and so 2 of 8 for him in the game tonight. Regular season entering today, he was 2 of 14, so that brings him to 4 of 22 this regular season from 3. And then if you add in the preseason for 22 plus 5 of 21, so 9 of 43 for Pritchard from 3, going back to the start of the preseason, which is pretty rough. And someone asked me this during the game, Sherrod. That's 21% from 3 for Pritchard so far, going back to the beginning of camp. Is this style wearing on guys from a shooting standpoint? Because if you look at the team's total through these games now, 15 of 45 from 3 tonight in this one. That's 33%. Against the Knicks, they were 34.1%, pretty much the same efficiency, 15 of 44. And then on opening night, they finished that one 11 of 43 from 3, 25%. So they've pretty much been 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 3-point makes at about 25 to 33%, which is legitimately one of the worst efficiencies in the league. And Jaylen said it in camp, we have to play this way. We have to guard up constantly, press, be aggressive, play fast, which we can get into a little bit how effectively they've done that. But is that all-out effort style also hurting their 3-point shooting, which they're still obviously here relying on pretty heavily?
Well, I got to believe it is. And to Jaylen's point, they don't have a choice. They can't play the style that they've done in the past because they don't have that talent. They can't play this, more methodic half-court offensive set style that they've used to, because it's not going to win. It is to me, it is a white flag raising moment if all of a sudden they decide we're just going to play the style that we've played in the past when we had Al Horford and Porzingis and Drew
Well,
Holiday.
you're seeing a little bit of it. Like Jaylen, I felt like was more isolation heavy today, putting his head down, attacking. I thought were more one-on-one in this game offensively between Simons, Pritchard, and some other guys. Like they were flying around in this game to me, at least offensively.
Well, Jaylen, I'll give him a pass for that because he had it going. And so for me, on those nights when Jaylen clearly is in his bag and is being effective and being efficient at a high level, then you can revert more to that one-on-one style of play because it's working for him. But more nights than not, it's not going to be as effective and efficient as it was for him individually. And again, I go back to the fact that they're missing a lot of shots that they normally make. And I do think the style of play is wearing him down a little bit quicker. But you know what? That was the whole point of having an incredibly difficult training camp, so that they would be more physically fit for the challenge that this season was going to present. You were going to have to play harder to be more competitive, because you did not have the talent that you're used to. And so I don't want to hear any excuses from them about just, style of play is impacting their ability to make shots, because your coach literally prepared you for this moment throughout training camp. It was very clear that you were going to have to play harder this year than you've had to do in the past, and not be nearly as successful in terms of wins and losses. And from what I'm seeing, and I think most people will agree, they're simply not making the plays that they should be making. Rebounding, it is what it is. But when you're getting wide open looks, you need to knock those down. And the thing about it, Bobby, we're not talking about like having great play for 2.5, maybe 3 quarters, and then maybe looking fatigued in the fourth. They're starting to stink it up in like near the end of the first quarter. We're not even a full quarter into the game before you start seeing the drop off in terms of their ability to knock down shots. Now, there's no way I can equate them not being in the greatest of shape physically to them shooting poorly, to the fact that they're starting to tail off their shot making in the first quarter. They're just simply not getting it done. I don't believe it's a physical thing. I don't believe it's an X's and O things. I think it's simply guys are not doing the jobs that they're tasked with doing.
Yeah, for sure. And they need more guys to step up. Jaylen's overall done a decent job, I feel like, leading them. Pritchard is starting to get going. It looks like a little bit based off the end of this game. I feel like Hauser's been solid. The guys in the higher end of their rotation have overall given them a decent amount offensively. Once you get past,
kind of hit and miss though. Derek White's been kind of hit and miss.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see him on the injury report going into this one. No real threat of him not playing, but he sprained his right wrist, and I don't know when that was. Maybe we'll hear from him after this game, but that showed in this one. I thought 0 of 4 from 3 in the first half. Got going a little bit after halftime, but ended this one 6 of 18 and 3 of 11 from 3. He was outstanding on opening night. We were all starting to talk All-Star, All-NBA, but the big thing he talked about in camp was consistency this year. And after one great game, tailed off a little bit in the last 2 for him in this new week here. And I'll go back to the beginning of this game because you mentioned the tail off. You watched the first couple minutes of this game, and it felt like this might be the one where they actually put it all together and finally win and play a complete game.
Right.
Brown was aggressive early, took most of their shots. They obviously started Hugo Gonzalez over Sam Hauser in this one after his energetic debut in New York. Some good offensive contributions from him in that one too. So I think they felt like they could put him out there and have him fit in with the starters and just bring some energy on the boards and defense. And he did that. Steal a minute and a half into this game. Fouls, another steal a couple minutes later after a Duren offensive rebound. About 3 minutes into this game, he got a block and help position. And I believe in the first half had 3 steals, a block, and forced an offensive foul on Detroit. So he forced, I think, 2 of their first 5 turnovers, which were in rapid succession to start this game. And then in the first half, I tweeted out at one point, he had like 4 out of the Pistons' first 10 forced turnovers from what I can remember here. So he was impactful. Definitely looked like a good move to begin this game. The Celtics went up by 17 pretty quickly, and then it almost immediately tailed off into the second unit. They put Luka Garza out there, who was just coming back. He had a really rough night. Javonte Green scored 5 straight points, or actually 7 straight points off the bench for them to get right back into it. Isaiah Stewart, Osar Thompson, who was obviously dominant in this one as well. And like we said, end of the first quarter, it was already down to 9. The Celtics closed the first quarter shooting 2 of 6 with a couple turnovers into their bench. And it was all Pistons from that point on. I think at one point in the third quarter, I went back and counted up, but the Pistons outscored the Celtics by 29 from that point where they went up 17 up to the biggest Pistons lead that they built in the second half. So we've talked about winning quarters. We've talked about stretches, little stretches that hurt the Celtics here. The story of this game was actually that the Celtics were good for a little bit in the first, a little bit in the fourth, but most of this game, the Pistons just blew them off the floor. And really, it was the Celtics offense that struggled. 25 in the second, 23 in the third.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not, and again, Detroit's going to be a good team this year. I think we've all agreed that they're going to be, in that top 4, 5, 6 conversation, and maybe even higher depending on how things shake out. But the Celtics struggles felt it was more them than what Detroit was doing. They were getting great looks, I think, for most of this game, and they just simply weren't knocking them down. Now, could that just be physical fatigue from playing hard defensively? There may be some of that, but that to me is no reason or explanation as to why you're missing shots or you let a 17-point lead in the first quarter be cut in half in just really a couple minutes. And that is something that, again, there are a lot of positives that they can take away from this game. But again, the negatives, the things that they're not doing well, there's a pattern to them. And there doesn't seem to be a clear kind of nipping of the bud of that pattern. And so it feels as though like offensive rebounds, or lack of defensive rebounding on their part is going to be an issue all season long. And if that is the case, let's put it this way. The last time they lost first 3 games to start the season was Brad Stevens' first year in Boston. That team won 25 games. Not saying we're going to go there, but
that's where John was.
Right.
We talked him off the ledge a little bit. We gave him some optimism, but that's where he started, when he was looking at this roster over the offseason. I think he ended up getting close to 40 or wherever he ended up there. Jimmy was the lowest on this team. But John was low coming in, just looking at what they have talent-wise here. And, I've been a proponent of the system and the top-end talent that they have, but those guys just aren't getting it done for the most part right now. And no depth is emerging. Like, you've seen bits and pieces from Keita. I thought Tillman had some moments in the preseason and then on opening night against Philly. He didn't even play tonight. So whether it was matchups or his offense going in the wrong direction, he finds himself on the bench in this game. They tried Minot to unlock them, and he had a nice third quarter tonight, scored 10 points. Still finishes a minus 11. Garza, we mentioned. Simons, we should get to in a little bit because that thing does not look great right now. And so we're stacking up all the things that don't look great right now. There's a few silver linings for sure, but they have like 2 guys a night emerging right now. And you need way more than that to win a game, even to be close in a game, because the final score looked close here, but this was not super competitive after the first quarter for the Celtics. And this is a team, given what the Pistons had done so far. I know they had a nice win in their second game over Houston, but they're not one of the better teams in the East to me. They're probably going to be a middle of the pack playoff team. But in my mind, coming out of the first 2, like the Knicks could be the 1 seed. The Sixers, if everything goes right, could be at the top of the East too. So gave them the benefit of the doubt there too. Like maybe these were just tough opponents. You're still figuring things out, but you have to win on Sunday. You can't start the year 0-3. That's exactly what they did here. So let's get into that history, Sherrod. You mentioned it. Sean Grandy tweeted it out after the last game. And the Celtics are now 0-3 for only the 11th time in team history. Obviously, you mentioned the last one was that tank year, the first Brad Stevens year, 2014. Interestingly enough, 2012, they go to the East Finals, but that was an abbreviated schedule. Right. So a little bit different circumstances there. Maybe it helps actually to have a longer schedule, but that is not a normal year when you look at it. They've only made the playoffs 3 out of the 10 years that they started 0-3, including that one. 95, they lose in the first round. I believe that was a Reggie Lewis team, right?
I think so.
And then 51, they go to the East semifinals. And obviously, we don't have to mention things were a little different back then. But in modern history, when they've started 0-3, they have typically not made the playoffs when they've done so. It's not a good sign. I'll have to look at the league stats, how that usually goes around the league. But this is where the Celtics stand when it comes to starting 0-3 here. And we said this on the show after Friday, Sherrod. When you look at the schedule coming up, it doesn't get any easier. The Pelicans are interesting because they've played great on offense so far, and they've really struggled defensively. They haven't had their centers available, but it looks like they're going to get back into the lineup for tomorrow. Face Missy practiced today after hurting his ankle, so I'd imagine he'll be back in their lineup. But they put Zion at center last game, and obviously that didn't go great. So they're 0-2 coming into this one as well. But that's a tough team. They've scored a lot of points. They're fast. They're physical. They have some great top-end players. No game's going to be easy for the Celtics this year. And obviously, New Orleans is going to be a little desperate, too, on the back half of a back-to-back. Cleveland on Wednesday, Philly again on Friday, and another back-to-back against Houston on Saturday. So this is another tough week coming up. Scariest part is that Jaylen was on the injury report again today, and obviously he looked great. No signs of that limiting him here in this one. But does that mean he's resting the back half of the back-to-back here? I'll be interested to see that, because they don't have Jaylen tomorrow. They're really up against it, even against the New Orleans team that's probably one of the easier ones that they've seen on the schedule so far.
Yeah. I mean, there are no days off, no cupcake opponents, no one that they can look at on the schedule and feel good about going into that game that they're going to win. They're going to have to play better. I mean, it sounds simple and easy to do, which obviously it's not. But they're going to have to find a way to play better. They're going to have to do a better job on the defensive boards. They're going to have to do a better job when it comes to forcing turnovers. They're going to have to do a better job of getting someone to step up who can play above what they're expected to. I think Jaylen has been consistent with his play. He had the big turnover game against the Knicks. We get it, but it's not like that's something we haven't seen Jaylen do before. It's not like it's something that is an automatic seals their fate that they're going to lose type of thing. We've seen Jaylen have high turnover games and the Celtics still win those games. So that's nothing unusual. But the only guy that I think most people up to this point can feel comfortable with who has exceeded expectations is Hugo. He's the only one. And it's not even so much that he's just playing better than we thought. He's actually
That's a funny way to put it.
What's that?
Yeah. That's a funny way to put it. He if you just are plainly saying who has exceeded expectations so far, it's just Hugo. Because he wasn't expected to play.
Right. But the thing is, though, not only is he playing better than expectations, but he's also playing well enough to where he's justified why he's playing. It's not that he's just exceeding a low bar. He's actually playing well enough. I mean, think about this. When they played the Knicks, who's he guarding? Jalen Brunson. When they played Detroit, who's he guarding? Cade Cunningham. He's literally taking on the toughest assignment out there and doing a pretty damn good job. And so for me, and I think for most fans, when you've got your 19-year-old rookie doing that kind of stuff, the rest of these vets need to pick up some of this damn slack and make some plays and get some buckets so that you can actually allow him to focus solely on continuing to do the good job that he's doing defensively and still give his team a chance to win. And again, that's the frustrating part, I think, for fans is that, you're seeing little blips here and there of good basketball, but there's just not enough. There's not enough consistency. It goes back to what Derek White was saying about his game, but it really applies to this entire team. They have to be more consistent with the things they do well. And we're not seeing that in any way, shape, or form after these first three games.
We are definitely not. And Jaylen, he's in an interesting spot because I think the first two games, if you go back and watch, he's passing. He's trying to get other guys involved.
Yep.
That's been his message through camp too, is I'm not trying to prove anything myself. I'm not trying to take over and show what I'm made of. I want to play good defense. I want to get guys involved. I want to play some good basketball here. And today was the first time I think you saw that shift toward, I have to put my head down and take over a little bit more. And credit to him, he did a good job with it. Only 4 turnovers after the 7 against New York. In terms of assists here, you're looking at 4 turnovers. So that's better than it had been, even though you'd like to see that balance a little better right now. So this was a step forward for him, given the load he had to carry here, I'd say, but it's still not enough. Like he was talking the other night about needing to get more involved on the boards too. He ends up with 6 in this one. One of 3 players who had 6+ here. Pritchard put in some work on the board, so he should get some credit for that too.
Yeah,
Hayden did a decent job as well.
Yeah, he kept some balls alive that didn't register at all. They got them extra possessions, which was good. I thought, again, I thought Pritchard's best game of the season. I felt that he put his imprint on this game in a positive way. Yes, he missed some shots that he's expected to make, but overall, I thought he did a number of really good things that gave them a chance tonight. Same thing with Jaylen. I think Jaylen, is in the toughest position of anyone on this team because you have the ability to take over every single night. I mean, if Jaylen Brown truly wanted to, he could very easily be a 30-point per game scorer for this team. this season. I have absolutely no doubts about that. But the thing is, they wouldn't be very good because that means he would be taking a lot of shots he normally wouldn't want to take or should take. But I do believe that he's got to find that balance between being a little bit more of an impactful player offensively than he's been in the past, but not necessarily be a ball hog. And it's a hard line to walk, but he has to do a better job in that regard if this team has any shot of getting back on track and winning some games. Because if Jaylen Brown is giving me 23 points and 4 or 5 rebounds and 4 or 5 assists every night, I can tell you more nights than not the Celtics will lose that game. He's going to have to be able to really put up numbers, either scoring, rebounding, or passing, that stand out above and beyond what he normally does. And then some of those other numbers can be about the same, but there has to be one statistical area where Jaylen Brown is exceptional for them to win night in and night out. It doesn't have to be the same category, but there needs to be one of those categories. Tonight, it was a scoring. I thought he scored well enough for them to win. Guys around him need to pick it up and be more consistent and frankly, take advantage of those special offensive nights that he has, like this one. Because, I mean, he finished 12 for 25, but I thought that there are at least 4 or 5 shots that he took that he probably wouldn't have taken if other guys had a little bit more of a rhythm to their shooting, where he felt he just kind of had to take those shots to give them something, some kind of juice offensively.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a good step forward for him individually, but it's not just going to be about his game, his production, his performance this year. It's going to be about how it all comes together for this team. And they are in a weird spot right now where some fans are looking at it and saying, good, like, we want to tank this year. And obviously, I think they and us and others are looking at it and saying, how can they turn this thing around? Because I'm not just going to sit here and say, woohoo, tank, like, go 82 and everything's going to be solved here. We can get to that conversation in a little bit because that's starting to annoy me a little bit. I obviously was against tanking going into this year and still am for several reasons. But first, I want to hear from Joe Mazzulla here, who actually did talk about Jaylen Brown's performance in this game here.
Questions, Joe?
Joe, they had an 18-4 advantage in points in the paint in the third quarter. How much of that do you attribute to the point of attack defense compared to trying to deal with Duren in particular?
Yeah, I think that's on. That was on me. We waited too long to change our pick and roll coverage, which allowed him to get some rolls to the basket. And there was a couple of them that were in transition, but some of them just because of our low man trying to be there, and they do a great job of throwing lobs. So it took too long for me to adjust to a little bit more aggressive coverage, which we kind of took some of that away in the fourth quarter.
And with Hugo, first career start today, just how valuable for the team defense is his ability to either not get dislodged by a screen or quickly recover? What does that do for the rest of the team?
I think it's at the end of the day just to continuing to build that defensive mindset, and guys that are able to come in and just give us what we need defensively. So he did a great job of that tonight. He's able to get through screens. He can kind of give D. White and Peyton and Jaylen a little break on the on-ball stuff there and have him do it. So it was good that he was able to do that. We just got to continue to develop that mentality.
A little bit from Joe taking on the chin there with some of the matchup stuff. Subdued. That wasn't the full Joe session. We might get that in a little bit there from Detroit, but taste of it for now. Noah's going to join us in a little bit. I believe Sam Hauser and Jaylen, I think, are talking. I want to say. So we'll get that in a little bit, as well as some perspective on what it looked like on the ground there from Noah. I'm not putting it on Joe. I think he's actually put them in a good position right now, one, with their style. I think we both agree with that, Sherrod, that frenetic fly around, force turnovers, get on the offensive glass themselves, still shoot a lot of threes because there are a lot of shooters left over here. That's given them the best chance to win. And they've been in these games, 2 out of the 3 now. They've led by double digits. So when that happens, to me, I don't think that's on the coach. Maybe this is some adjustment stuff you can look at through the flow of the game. Obviously, they're just doing a revolving door rotation right now and just pulling guys in and out of the game constantly. So maybe you can criticize them for that. But what else are you going to do when you have a completely new roster and you have no idea what any of these guys bring to the table? You have to find places and spots for them to get in. Shireman was in for a couple minutes again tonight. Tillman obviously left the rotation, and they saw what they had in Garza, which obviously did not go well. But I don't think you can bury anybody right now. You have to keep finding pockets for pretty much everybody on the roster to contribute. And I love the move to start Hugo in this game. So I'm not pointing the finger at Joe right now and blaming him. Right now, you're just looking at this roster and saying that they're shorthanded in their areas where they're weak. And you're looking at numerous guys, especially among the established veterans who have been here, who just aren't playing up to the standard they need to win games right now. So Joe is not high on my list. I didn't even have him on my blame pile on Friday. Maybe I should have. It's going to take me a little while to get to Joe when it comes to the blame this year.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think overall, Joe has done a solid job with what he's been dealt, the hand that he's been dealt with this roster. But the problem when you have a team like this is that, again, because the margins are so slim in terms of winning, every miscalculation is magnified because we know that it means more in terms of winning and losing because you have less to work with. You have more. You have less of a cushion to be imperfect. There's a point in, I believe it was either end of the first, maybe, where they were, or maybe right before the half, where they took Jaylen out with about maybe 50 seconds or so to go, and they had the ball, and they didn't get it. They didn't get another shot off. In fact, they gave up a bucket after that, and it was one of those things where I understood what he was thinking, and I would normally agree that was the right thing to do. But when you're playing, when Jaylen had just had a driving layup like a few seconds later, you got to do things a little bit unconventional or out of your normal routine to some extent. When you have, one, a team that doesn't have an identity, and two, one player who has an identity, who's playing one of his better games, if not his best game of the season offensively, you got to ride that as long as you possibly can. And I wouldn't necessarily say Joe made mistakes per se. I would say that he made some questionable decisions that normally would not be that big a deal, but because the margins are so small for this team, and if they don't work out, it becomes a much bigger deal than it should be. But again, he has to figure out a way to get this team to either become a better rebounding team or find a way to make it not become such a major issue / storyline night in and night out. Because the first 3 games, all losses, if you were to go down a list of what are the 3 biggest reasons they lost, each game, defensive rebounding is going to be in that top 3. And so he's got to figure out a way to just get them to either eradicate that, minimize it, or find a way to make it not such a obvious problem for them.
Yeah, and I think if you are going to criticize Joe for something so far, it's the style they want to play not translating fully. And through 3 games now, after ranking in the top 10 in pace during the preseason, they are now 24th in the league in pace. And it's obviously hard to get out and run and play at a high pace when you're not rebounding. They have forced turnovers, so that's a little strange to me that they haven't been able to turn those into consistently fast offense, because that's the style we said that they have to play that's going to lead to success and more possessions and more points. This hasn't been a great offense either through the games that they've played to this point. So just not a lot to feel great about so far. We are going to hear from Noah in just a second, but I want to shout out one of our sponsors first before we bring her in here. Some sound to listen to there in Detroit. And here's our wonderful sponsor, Prize Picks, who, ahead of a big game on Sunday night, it's the perfect time to go over there and build a lineup. And I love it. We're now 2 months into football season, and some of our fantasy teams are just off the rails right now. Injuries. You didn't pick the right guys. You're in last place and have lost all, if not most of your games. So go and pick a new team every week over on Prize Picks, where you and I make decisions every day. But on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Put users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Injury reboots, of course, in football, that one's big. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. It's the best way to cash win cash this football season, which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So let's welcome in Noah from Detroit. I think this is her first time in Detroit. What's up, Noah? No audio from Noah right now. Try to get that fixed. Got you now?
I think you got me now. It's a
Perfect.
no audio kind of day here in Detroit.
So that's what I wanted to know. What's the scene like there? What's the locker room like? What's the mood of the team right now after the 0-3 start?
Yeah, honestly, more positive than you would think. We heard from Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown post-game, and they both, especially Peyton, talked about how this was a necessary step in the right direction for them and that they feel like they are moving forward as they should and that they just wish they were winning during the process. And Peyton specifically said, if we shoot like we normally shoot and we're getting the looks that we want, we win 2 of 3 of these games. And so I think they feel frustrated about 2 things. The defensive rebounding, which Jaylen brought up again countless times in his post-game press conference. And then the fact that they're not hitting shots that they feel like they should be hitting. And Peyton in specific said, I've been overthinking it. The ball didn't even feel right coming off my hand in the previous 2 games. And now today he felt a little bit better. So I think you see with Peyton and you see with Derek, I think they're getting good looks. It's just the margin of error already when you're in a shooting slump. Like, it's hard to win games in the NBA, but right now it's even harder. But the rebounding is, Jaylen brought up the rebounding to almost every question we asked. Like, I think they're very frustrated that they're not
How
getting.
could you not?
It's the elephant in the room that there's no way that you can look at their struggles and not point that as being reasons 1, 2, and 3. That's a problem. I'm glad Noah, hearing what Peyton had to say, because it does look like he's overthinking the process out there. He's getting the kind of looks that we've seen him knock down. I'm just wondering, just being around him, do you think it might have something to do with the fact that him and Derek specifically are in very different roles now versus last year? That maybe you think maybe part of them overthinking it a little bit?
I don't think so. I asked him about like adjusting to be a starter, and I think he has the sense of like it changes your routine and all of that. But he's had like plenty of shooting slumps before in the NBA. You know, all of these guys do, and I think he's gone through similar streaks. And the problem is this one's coinciding with this, you know, larger role, larger minutes. But I mean, Derek's missed some tough ones in this game, but I feel like Peyton has gotten so many easy, clean looks. And at the end of the day, a clean 3-point shot is a clean 3-point shot, whether you're starting, whether you're coming off the bench. And he is somebody that has reliably hit those in his career. So that's going to turn around. I'm not saying that's going to turn around and now this is going to be the best team in the league, but they don't have it. They don't have enough right now to have Derek and Peyton in a shooting slump. Like, it's just, they're too important to the offense. And in the past, you could have 2 of those guys in a shooting slump and you have Tatum with 30 and Jaylen with 30 and Kristaps comes, you know, like they don't have that anymore. But I don't get the sense at all that it's like, oh, now the defensive pressure on Peyton is just so different than it was last year that now he can't get his shot off. Like, that's not what I'm seeing, at least. And that's not what he's telling us.
Yeah, I'm just wondering is he in his head? That really the biggest challenge that he's got to deal with is himself. Because I don't think teams are doing anything with that starting unit to disrupt him from getting to his spots, from taking the shots that he wants to take. It feels as though he's just overthinking it a little bit and maybe almost wanting it too bad, almost wanting to make plays too.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to just doing what he's always done, whether he was starting at Oregon or coming off the bench in Boston, and just play. I really wish I watched him and just felt that, okay, he's just out there playing. I don't feel that when I watch him now.
Yeah, and I feel like they're still in the process of trying to figure out that style they want to play offensively. No, and when you aren't generating this amount of stops you want to defensively, that's tough, especially down the stretch of this game. And, you know, we are realistically looking now at 2 games where they lost in crunch time with their offensive execution on that end of the floor against Philly, and then the inability to rebound down the stretch in this game against Detroit. They probably win this game if they grab 2 of those final 4 offensive rebounds that they couldn't get down the stretch there. And against Philly, if they could execute one of the 2 final plays at the end of the clock, they win that game. But there's also other segments earlier in the game. Of course, this one where they were uncompetitive in the second and third quarters. and the opening night game where they blew it obviously earlier in the quarter, leading by 13. So I think we're past the point of like a couple stretches killing them right now in these games, and more looking at like a larger segment where they just haven't been a great team so far. And I don't know how I compartmentalize all of the 3 games we've looked at right now, because I said this to Sherrod earlier. I feel like I'm now at about 80%. This is like, remember after the first game, I was like, all right, it's 50-50. I saw 50 good, 50 bad out there. Now, especially after a game where they were fully healthy and everybody's out there, I'm at like 80, this isn't great, and 20, this is good and, silver lining and, encouraging right now. Where are you at now that you've watched this for 3 games? Like, are you starting to lose confidence in them a little?
Not really. I think the reality is that there's the number one issue that we knew was going to be an issue is a massive issue, and that's the defensive rebounding. Like, you're just not going to win a lot of games in
But
this
what if
league
that never
way.
gets better?
And that's the thing. The big question is that controllable at all? And what I'll just say is I rewatched the first 2 games, and obviously it was in the building for this one. A lot of it, to me, in my, relatively novice opinion, like, it looks like it's guys that are being asked to rebound who haven't really had too much in their NBA career. And I asked Joe about that, and Joe said, maybe it's a little bit of that, but he said, and they don't have like the Tatums of the world that you can just count on to swallow. He didn't use Tatum's name, but they don't have like those guys. But the other thing is that guys are just in general are crashing way more in the league. So it's like, this is a bad year.
I was thinking that earlier.
This is a bad
Everybody's
year for them to
crashing.
be like shorthanded with all these post players, and everybody's out of position all the time, because already this is where the league's at this year. I mean, this was the line of questioning that, Fred Katz of The Athletic had pregame in New York, and he's not writing about the Celtics, with just everybody's crashing. Like, that's been the big story. So how controllable is that? I think it's more controllable than it looks right now. I just have to believe that somebody like Jaylen Brown, who is a really good athlete, he had 6 rebounds in this game. I think you can start counting on him for more than that. And he's multiple times now pointed a finger at himself and said, I need to be better on the glass. One other thing I'll mention, just because I know we haven't played sound yet, Jaylen is still playing through this hamstring strain. He said the first 2 weeks after suffering the injury were high risk as far as re-injury goes. And so a little bit of that, like maybe he doesn't have the same explosion or burst that we're used to him having. I was wondering in my head, is it maybe like a knee thing? Because we know that he had the off-season knee surgery, but he pretty plainly said like he's playing through this hamstring thing, and he wants to play tomorrow night. He wants to play on back-to-backs. He doesn't want to sit. But there is that mental hurdle of like, he doesn't want to re-injure it. So that's been, I think, affecting him a little bit. So just putting that out there, because I realized that's probably a relevant update from the locker room.
Yeah, that's the other thing that worries me too, is this team's a little banged up right now. And we'll look ahead to the Pelicans game in a sec here, as we start to look forward to the back-to-back. I'll be heading down there, Noah as well, for a pretty important game now. Like the 0-3 stats are dire in terms of making the playoffs and all that. The 0-4 stats, I'd have to imagine, would be pretty devastating to look at. We do have some sound from the locker room, so we'll put a bow on this game before we look forward, listening to Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown react to this one.
So the question is do I think the paint was the issue?
Yeah, and just like how much of that do you attribute their paint production to the point of attack defense compared to trying to deal with Dern in particular down
I mean,
low?
they're a big team. They rebound really well, crash the glass. So, I think this is part of growing. We learn in each game how to keep getting better and better. Today, I think we made a step, and that's how you got to look at it. It's just, did we get the result we wanted? No, but like, are we taking a step? And I think we did that tonight, so can hang our hats on that.
What do you feel like improved tonight?
Just feel like defensively, the whole game, we went on a stretch maybe in the third where we got stagnant a little bit and let it slip. But defensively, I thought guys brought great energy, and but yeah.
Peyton, Joe always talks about the process of winning and what that looks like. It feels like that's changed this year with your guys' new play styles, more aggressive defense and the offense changing. As these results come in, you get more film on what it looks like against any opponents. How much are you thinking about, not changing it, but like adjusting it, how it's working?
Make small tweaks throughout the season. Still 3 games in, so it's funny to say this, but I think it's my first time really going on a 3-game losing streak. So it's like unfamiliar, but it's a little adversity, but you look at this, it will make us better. But we'll look at it, and there's new offensive things, defensive things we can add to help us get better looks and stuff like that. But making a step.
What do you want to take from the losses? You said it was your first 3-game losing streak. What do you need to take from this? What do you guys need to improve out of this to kind of stop it here?
Well, again, it's like a lot of new faces, so we're learning how to play together. People we haven't played with before. What roles, how are we going to help each other be better on the court? So I feel like tonight, that was, like I said, it was a great step. But tomorrow we're going to go to war again, try to pull that one off, win or lose, come back to the next game and go back at it. So this is how I want to take. I think it's Joe's mindset, it's this organization's mindset. It's just a growth mindset of like, can we continue to chip away at it and get better?
You had a very visceral reaction to your first 3-point make in this game.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've just been missing shots you normally make, or
Yep.
it's not necessarily different looks or anything like that?
No. I mean, you've seen it tonight. I even missed some wide open ones I usually hit. So it's funny. Like there's times you just, as shooters, you go through phases where you just don't make the shots that you want. But I feel like tonight it was coming out of my hands a lot better and looked a lot more smoother. So I thought the misses were better. As the Philly game and the New York game, something was just off. And I think it was more mental. I started overthinking shots and stuff like that. So it was a step in the right direction shooting-wise. I still don't think I shot it that well. So we're due to break out of this and start shooting it.
And then just in general, how has starting felt to you? I know you've come off the bench for most of your career.
Yeah.
What is that adjustment like?
I mean, it's a different field. Like, I've been so used to coming off the bench, but like you start the game. How do you warm up? How do you just a little different? But like tonight, I thought I made a good step in that category of like, how do I approach the game? Now I'm playing more minutes. Like, coming off the bench, sometimes you have to provide a spark and like be looking for your shots right away, looking to defensively get into it. But like now, playing more minutes, starting you can the flow of the game, read it, take what's there, stuff like that.
How do you guys avoid fouling so much, or is that just kind of the byproduct of your kind of a new defense?
I think it's a little bit of both. Tonight they were getting some calls there in the first stretch. I thought it was a little tough. Obviously, we're trying to amp the defense up, so fouling's going to come sometimes. But then it's, you live in the ref's hands to make those 50-50 calls at times. So, but yeah, we got to clean it up, knowing that when we're in the bonus, maybe that's when we got to be a little bit smarter, stuff like that.
So interesting thing on the starting. I haven't been too tough on Pritchard so far. The chat has I'd say he's probably number 2 on the blame pie, if we want to call it that.
Tonight?
No, for the season.
Joe's
number 1 by
points,
far.
Season game high, 10 rebounds in this game, 4 assists,
Yeah,
1
he
turnover.
turned it around. I liked his finish, and he was a big part of that stretch in the fourth quarter that almost won this game. The rebounding too, a huge point that they needed help in, and he's obviously one of their feistier rebounders, able to just get in there and pull it away from guys with his speed. So, among the adjustments we're considering here, switching Simons and Pritchard isn't up there for me. I like the Hugo insertion today. I thought that was a good idea, and it obviously worked early. I'm not at the point yet where I think putting Pritchard on the bench is going to solve much of anything, especially, and we haven't hit on him yet here today, Simons has left a lot to be desired through 3 games. And I think a big part of it is he just doesn't have the room or, a green light to assert himself fully yet. I don't feel like we've seen him be as aggressive as he possibly can out there. And he's even said that to me, like, I want to lean on Jaylen and Peyton and White. It's their team. Like, they're the guys here. So I don't feel like he feels emboldened to assert himself fully yet. But I do think there was some, argument, and I obviously didn't agree with it going into the season, of maybe he'd defend better around the best players on the team. Maybe he'd get the best looks playing around the best players on this team, and maybe feel a little more involved too. I'm not going there. The chat is, so I don't know. What do you think? We'll start with Sherrod.
Well, I think when you look at his situation, it's basically almost like an inverse of what Peyton Pritchard is going through. Peyton is learning how to become, just figure out exactly how can you be an impactful player as a starter versus being an impactful player coming off the bench. And, Anthony is going to just the opposite. How can I be impactful coming off the bench when all I've known for the most part of my career is being a starter? And there is a different mindset. I think Peyton kind of alluded to that a little bit in your question, Noah, that there are some kind of subtle nuances that differ when you're starting as far as how you approach the game versus when you're coming off the bench. And it's going to take Anthony, I think, some time to figure that out. I would say that it's going to take him longer, certainly, than Peyton. One, because Peyton is familiar with the system. Two, I think it's a hell of a lot easier to figure out how to kind of pace yourself with the flow of the game when you're starting versus figuring out how to figure out the pace that you need to play at when you're coming off the bench. I don't think that there will be a switch at any point between Peyton and Anthony. I think Peyton has not just earned the right to be a starter. I think he's a better fit for what the Celtics want to do with that starting group. The feistiness that you alluded to, Bobby, I think they need more of that in that first group. I don't think
he's one of the guys who press in full court, all that. Exactly. He's one of the guys getting shots up. He's one of their shot creators. Right. So I'm not there yet. I get the argument. I see why from Simon's perspective. Maybe it helps Pritchard where he's been familiar and successful before. I don't see any tangible reasons why that would put him in a better position to succeed other than he's just used to it. So I don't know. If someone else has better perspective on it than that, let me know on why that would be the right fix. But I don't know. I don't see it.
And remember, Bobby, he's coming from a franchise where he was a starter and they were bad. Or a bad team. So it's not like putting Anthony in as a starter would all of a sudden, get him to help you win more games, because when he's been in that role as a starter, he did not win a lot of games. And so that logic just doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. And again, I go back to something we just mentioned, we talked with Noah about just briefly ago, and that is Peyton. This was the most complete game we've seen from Peyton this season. And we're 3 games into the season, and we're already starting to see signs of him kind of figuring out how to be impactful with that first group. And yes, we would love for it to have been, accounted for and present from day one. But if we're basically 12 quarters into the season and he's been, he's kind of figured out, or at least it looks as though he's figured out the last 3 quarters, some change, how to be impactful. I'm okay with that. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does against New Orleans. My gut tells me Peyton's going to have a really big game against the Pelicans, because I think that him more than anyone else, I thought, took away significant positives from this loss that I think can help him and I think can help the Celtics in their next game.
Definitely. And we lost Noah here. We'll try to get her back. Give us a thumbs up here, Noah, if you are good. Looks like she's still working through some stuff over there. So I'm not going down that road. It's one of the big things that need to change. We can get Noah's thought on that when she comes back in. I'll get your thought on Hugo, Sherrod, as we wrap up our conversation about this game, because obviously I think he, again, is one of the few silver linings you can take away from their start to the season, is the fact that he looks comfortable, involved, and actually helpful to what they need in the aggression area.
Yeah. The one word you mentioned, Bobby, that I want to really focus on is comfort. Comfort, not only in terms of just what he's able to do, but comfort in gaining the trust of his head coach. This is a coach, Joe Mazzulla, we know this. He's not the biggest fan of rookies. He just doesn't really play them. And understandably so, because most rookies, particularly when you have a team built to win a championship or contend for one, rookies aren't going to help you much. Hugo is one of the guys and we talked about this before the season started. This season, on so many ways, is almost going to be like a season-long version of NBA's version of Hunger Games, because not all the guys that we see playing are going to be playing for the Celtics next year. Only the truly strong and impactful and difference makers are going to stick around. And Hugo is one of those guys that is going to stick around. There's nothing that he has done that gives me reason to believe that he's not going to get better than he is right now. And already he's figured out how to impact the game in a positive way for the Celtics. And it's clear that he's only going to get better, and he will be one of those guys that we're looking at in a couple of years as being, someone who was able to survive the rough days of being in Boston, to be a contributor on a really good team.
No, I got 3 questions for you on this one before we move on. The first is Hugo. Why do you think they started him, and what do you see from him in that start?
I think
saw
the
more than 15 minutes, Noah. We saw more than 15 minutes.
We saw 22 last game, and we saw, how many did we see today? I can't find it.
18.
18. So Jimmy and John might be owing me an apology.
I'm
At least
telling
one
you.
apology. That might
Zero
be
in the
my
first, though.
That doesn't count it towards the averages. Thank you. So that's even better.
Noah is owning that discourse. I'm just saying.
Listen, I might have gotten a lot wrong about this team this year, so this might have to be the only thing I can hold on to. Okay, so first question, why did Hugo start? I think when you're looking at this, the Knicks game, it felt like midway through that game, it became really apparent that he was a net positive on the floor, especially on the defensive end, which is, I think, is where they want to really hang their hat. And so they look at this game, Cade Cunningham poses a challenge that is, I don't know, equally, extremely challenging for opposing defenses. And to be able to put Hugo on him and not have Jaylen Brown, who's dealing with a hamstring strain, who has to score 40 points in this game, or Derek White to have that assignment, I think that's a great thing for the Celtics team. So some people might say Hugo scored 0 points. He was 0 of 2 from the field. He barely impacted the stat sheet at all, but it's an impact to just have him take that assignment on and not have to have Jaylen do it, which historically Jaylen oftentimes takes that best guard on the other team. But then he is shouldering much less responsibilities on the offensive end as he is right now. So I like that move a lot. I don't know if they're going to stick with Hugo as the starter the entire stretch here. I wouldn't be shocked if they go back and forth a number of times. But what he can do on the defensive end, I think, is not really much of a question for me, at least anymore. It seems like that is just his bread and butter. He's only going to get better as he gets smarter and as he kind of learns the individual habits of these star players. But for a 19-year-old to handle Jaylen, and I thought he did a good job on Cade in this game. That's why he's on the floor, and they're gonna hang their hat on that. So that's why he's so needed.
I just pulled up the stats for him from this one. 11 defensive possessions. Pistons shot 2 for 8 against him, 0.81 points per possession, which is very good. So he brought it defensively. Again, the offense is pretty limited, so I think that's why you don't see him get to 20 or too far beyond that. But there's definitely 15 minutes here for him as it stands, with no one else emerging among the backup wings. Even Minot, who I felt like gave them some good moments in this game, still is an awkward fit at that 4 spot. Obviously didn't play against New York. So that's Hugo's spot to lose potentially in the rotation. I don't know if he continues starting. I actually thought a big reason he started this one is that he might have to tomorrow if Jaylen doesn't go. We can get to that in a second based on the injury report going into this one. But the other question I had for you was when you jumped off there, the Simons Pritchard thing. Is that a conversation that needs to be had given that answer he had about starting there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, here's the reality. If you think Peyton Pritchard is a part of this team's future and you're Brad Stevens, this is the year where you're going to let him work through the potential adjustment of starting in a game. It's going to be easier for him right now, as it's going to be easier for Anthony Simons to start because those are the roles that they've been in. But I don't think that's reason enough to say, okay, you've been a starter, you've been a bench player. That's the way it's going to be because that's what you guys are used to. There are things that Peyton Pritchard brings to the table that this team needs. And again, I know it's the number one thing that fans hate hearing is oh, but if the shots were falling, but he is getting good looks. I don't think he's been forced to take shots that he's not comfortable with, or they're taking away the things that he normally looks for. I saw somebody in the chat box say normally he cooks second units. Not really, because he was playing 30 minutes a game last year. So it's not that the defensive pressure, in my view, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'll rewatch this game as well, but that's not what I've seen. And again, he was 8 of 16 from the field today and 2 of 8 from 3. And I think that the 3-point shot, a normal game, he'll make 3 or 4 of those. And now you're talking about a really good performance. So he's just doing other things. I mean, he was their leading rebounder in this game. I still think he's a better defender than Anthony Simons. So I will give Anthony Simons credit. I think he has been better than I expected. He hasn't been a massive liability on that end. So it's more about just the future of this team. If Anthony Simons is not a part of this future and Pritchard is, then you play through whatever struggles there might be early on here.
I'm with you there. I'm pulling up some more numbers for them offensively so far because I feel like aside from the defensive rebounding, offense has been the issue for this team more than defense to this point, and their offense is coming in at 0.97 for the season, which is below average, 30th percentile in the league right now. They're 43% from the field, 51 effective, which is pretty bad. The shooting's been rough. They're keeping the turnovers down, which is good. they're forcing turnovers on the defensive end. So one of the big questions I have so far is, and I'll go back and watch to figure this out, but they're definitely not rebounding, and that's hurting their transition game, but they are forcing a lot of turnovers, and they did that tonight too. But they're coming in the 10th percentile in transition efficiency, 0.89 points per possession. They are 44% on the break, which is pretty rough. I also told Sherrod earlier, the 24th in pace. So they've forced turnovers. They've done some of the things, even fouling defensively. They were willing to do a little bit more of that going into this year. But the pace and the offense and the way they picture playing on that end, even the movement, even the lack of cutting stand out to me so far, Noah. They are not in a great place offensively. And as good as Jaylen was in this game, and Peyton at times too, I feel like a lot of their success in this game was just going back to playing one-on-one, attacking mismatches, and hitting shots out of those possessions. Like, we just haven't seen enough other guys emerge offensively to feel great about that unit so far.
Yeah, that's honestly been one of my biggest takeaways. I remember when we were talking about this team in training camp and in the offseason, and it was like, okay, there's a ton of talent still offensively. Like, there are guys that can shoot the ball. There are guys that can create their own shot. Like, it's not last year's team, but there's still a lot there. And the defensive end is where we had questions because you lost like pretty much all your versatility. And then when this was one of the most like illuminating moments that I had this in training camp was when I asked Joe about the kind of where he's happy with things and where things are behind. And he said very plainly that the defense was ahead of the offense and that the defense was in a much better place and that the offense just takes more time. The defense is more about like buy-in mentality and effort, and that the offense is the schemes and kind of getting to know the chemistry and the guys and timing and all those things. And so he said before the season started, that that's going to be the challenge. And we have seen that. People here are mentioning the assist numbers. Like, that's very notable that guys are not necessarily creating for each other at the rate that they need to. A portion of that's going to be fixed if shooting improves, but I also think that it's not just been missed threes. And then as far as Jaylen goes, he and Joe both said it wasn't like necessarily that he came into this game looking for his shot more, but I also think that's just kind of like the right thing to say. It did look to me like he kind of got back to his bread and butter for stretches of this game of like, there's like 3 or 4 moves that Jaylen has that we all know, that we've seen for a decade now, that are very hard to stop. And I think he wants to be more than just the guy that can create his own shot off the dribble and get to his mid-range and rise up above his defender, because that's what he's been doing his whole career. I think he wants to make his teammates better and do all of that. And that's where some of the turnovers come from, right? He had 7 turnovers against the Knicks. I think sometimes that's there's a correlation there. But in this game, he just got back to what we know him as his best self individually. And, and so that's how he gets the 41 points. But I don't view it as like that's a ceiling, but that's kind of what we saw. Like, he got back to just where he's the most comfortable.
Chat wants an apology cam on him being all-star. I think it's too early for some of the Pritchard hate here.
Can I actually, I'm just going to do this one. Well, thank you for loving me. But I'm like, before I clap back at this person, I said that Peyton Pritchard has all-star potential 2 years ago. I stand by it. And there's nothing that he's done this season that like makes me discouraged at all about his performance. Like, I feel like I'm watching a different player than you guys. Like, what has he done so bad through 3 games that we're like so rattled? Like, I'm very confused by it. I've rewatched these games. He just hasn't made his threes, but that's like that's been a thing before. That's Sam Hauser deals with that. Everybody deals with that. Like, am I missing something else in Peyton Pritchard's game?
The one thing that I think he did a much better job of tonight, that I didn't think he did as good a job in the first 2 games, was finding ways to contribute outside of making shots. Like tonight, I thought he did a hell of a job on the boards. And even if he wasn't making his shots, there were clear indicators that he was still helping, doing things on a night when maybe he wasn't making his shots. But tonight he was making his shots and he was doing things outside of that. I'm not sure he did as good a job in those first 2 games of doing things outside of what we expect from him, which is to make shots. And I think that's the most significant difference between the Peyton Pritchard we saw tonight and the one we saw in the first 2 games. And to be very transparent, it's kind of weird trying to basically bury him for the season after 3 games.
When he had 21 points on 8 of 16 shooting tonight, he had 6. Like, it sounds like you think he's putting up like 8 points, 9 points, 5 points, and we're all like, like, I feel like
it's not. Yeah, he's been struggling with the shot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't think
he
he was
can't
that
shoot
good
right
in the
now.
first couple games. But tonight he was not only good in terms of shot making, but also good in doing some of those other, things on the edges and on the peripheral that he needs to do a good job for this team to be competitive in addition to making shots. That's all.
I think part of the frustration, and I don't want to speak for the fans in the chat, but there's a complete like loss in the playmaking department on this team from last year to this year, and that's Tatum first and foremost, but it's also guys that are like natural connectors like Drew Holiday and Al Horford, who I still think Al Horford is one of the most underrated components to an offense, and I said that all summer that it was a massive loss. And Luke Kornet too, a guy that is a natural connector. They don't have those guys on the roster right now. And so I think people are looking to Peyton Pritchard and to Derek White to just make this like instant leap to be these like vision first playmakers that can make up for all the playmaking that you lost in this roster. And it's like those, especially Peyton was used primarily as a scorer last year. And so the question, I guess the jury's out on, can he be more of a pure point guard? Can he be more of a facilitator for his teammates? I thought that his answer to me was pretty illuminating about like, as now I don't need to come in and be a microwave scorer. Like it's a different balance. And so that's going to be an adjustment. And I think we're seeing that in an ideal world. He has more than 4 assists in a game. Nobody had more than 4 assists in this game. So it's a natural, like things are going to have to shift as far as playmaking goes, but I don't know, maybe in a month we can have this conversation, but it feels very premature to be concerned about his role in the starting lineup
the only thing I'll say is he's naturally going to get more attention this year. And whether he goes to the bench, they're not going to forget about him if he goes to the bench. Like he's still going to play a lot of minutes and he's still going to get a lot of attention. So I don't think that solves this issue. I'm interested to see how he handles that. Obviously, he had the mistake at the end of the first game, which is tough with the bad read. But it is just 3 games. The shooting has lasted a little longer than 3 games. So I'll be interested to see how that develops and go back and watch some of those shots to see the quality of it. I also did pull up Simon's numbers. His pick and roll numbers, which is mostly what he's done, have been excellent so far, 96 percentile. So he's actually given them more playmaking than even I realized to this point. So, I'll consider it. If people want to have that be something we think about when it comes to tinkering, like they're going to have to try everything as this year goes on. I was thinking today when they threw Hugo in the lineup, and obviously that was the first time we saw a different starting lineup to begin this year. They might have like 40 starting lineups this year, the way it goes. Like they might be tinkering with that thing constantly throughout the year. And it obviously started tonight with an adjustment there. But I don't think Pritchard's high up the blame list. I don't think Simons is this magical solution for them necessarily. One of the biggest issues so far is that they just haven't been consistently getting possessions back on defense and turning into transition offense. The one thing we expected this team to do well above all else is be able to push the ball and play in transition and play with consistent pace. And for whatever reason, they haven't been able to do that yet. Tonight, obviously, a big reason was the rebounding. For Wednesday, they slowed down against Philadelphia, and New York was really over before we could even realize what was going on in that second quarter, which was just a disaster. So it's tough to feel good. It is early. I did expect them to struggle early in this schedule, but you got to get some wins here to actually start to put something together. And this is going to be another tough week with New Orleans, Cleveland, Philly, and Houston, 4 pretty good teams coming up. And I'm interested as we look ahead to Monday, Noah. Jaylen was on the injury report today with the hamstring management, I think is what they called it. I did mention last week, I was curious coming off the knee surgery, and coming off the hamstring, whether we'd see him in back-to-backs. It doesn't look like it was much of a question that he was going to play today. I don't know how much 0-3 factors into that at this point, but do you think we'll see Jaylen tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, he said he wants to play tomorrow. And so to me, if he's saying that, he's going to play unless he has some setback. Even if they want him to sit, I think at this point, he's probably going to be pretty adamant about it because they're 0-3, right? Like, this is the thing. Like, I know we can look at the big picture around the organizational health in the next 5 years. And is it in their best interest to be a 6 seed this year? Or is it in their best interest to win the lottery, right? Like, obviously a lottery seed is a better thing for long-term organizational health. That's just not how the players are ever going to view it. And somebody like Jaylen Brown, somebody like Peyton Pritchard, all these guys, like, they really want to turn this season around. I don't think they feel like 0-3 is, indicative of like where this team is going to be. And Pritchard said it himself, they shoot better. They probably win 2 of these games. We're not having these conversations right now. That's how they feel, So tomorrow feels like a must-win game in that sense, that if you're Jaylen Brown, yes, you played a lot today, you put a lot in your legs, but you want to come out there and give them a better chance to win. And obviously they're in a much better position to win if he's available.
What are you expecting in the New Orleans game, Sherrod?
Close game. I mean, both teams are going to come in with I think, an undeniable, high sense of urgency. I'm just looking for someone not named Jaylen Brown or Hugo Gonzalez to step up. Someone who can actually, when the game is over, you can look at someone else and say, damn, they really stepped their game up tonight. If you're the Celtics, if they're going to win, that has to happen. It could be Peyton, it could be Derek White, it could be, Luka Garza. It doesn't matter who, but someone needs to do something more than what they are typically doing. And it has to start now. This is one team. Frankly, this is the only team you can look at this week where you feel pretty good if you're the Celtics about your chances of winning on paper. I mean, Cleveland is going to be a monster. Houston is going to be tough. And then I think there has to be we got to get this one, fellas, type of mindset. And if you don't get it, it could get ugly really quick. And I'm thinking ugly from the standpoint of the fan base. I think, Bobby, something you alluded to before Noah came in about how, there's this growing voice of tank, get a lottery pick. And then there's this other voice that's really pissed at the fact that this team isn't playing better.
I'm sure Noah's seen it already. We'll tweet about, okay, this needs to get better. They got to do this. That didn't go great. And it's already getting to the point where people in our mentions going, good. Like, I want them to lose. Like, we're there already. And a lot of people were there over the summer.
Which I'll just add is such a fundamental flaw of this league. I love the NBA. I love covering the NBA. But the fact that tanking is so incentivized that it's October and Boston Celtics fans want to tank
too. And
I forget, even if they're right, like I get it. You're seeing these guys, these prospects. Like my brother just texted me, AJ is going to look great in a Celtics jersey. Literally 5 minutes ago, he texted me that. Like that's where people's heads at. And I get it because you're watching this team struggle and you're thinking to yourself, even if they pull it up a little, like it's still not going to be enough. But besides the point, the lottery system needs to be overhauled because it's absurd that's where fans are rightfully at, so early in the season. Like start talking about tanking when there's 5 games left and you're the second worst record in the league and you want to be the worst. Like it's just, it's not a good product for the league. And that's where the conversation's at. And I think it's going to change, honestly, in part because of the sports betting stuff, because it's all connected.
I just also think it hasn't gone well for the teams that have tried to manufacture it. If that's where you end up by the end of the year, even if you just slip into missing the playoffs, that's fine. And obviously Dallas got the number 1 pick out of doing that a year ago. And, they were in the play-in even and lost and ended up with the number 1 pick. So the new lottery odds are something that just haven't resonated with people still somehow, even though it's been a little while now. And the fact that this team is still, to me, a little bit better than being able to tank. You're looking at what Brooklyn's doing so far, and there are actually some other teams that have got off to disappointing starts here compared to what they wanted. We can have that discussion another time, but that's still something to me that's really irritating too, because it's not a surefire way to get back to success. And I know, John will say it's got to be part of it, drafting, but I'll say you have to draft from wherever you are. Cedric Howard went 11 in this last draft to the Grizzlies, who pulled off a draft night trade with Portland and found a way to get him in there. And with the 11th pick, he already looks like one of the best rookies in this class. You have to do stuff like that. Navigate the board, scout, find underrated, unsung prospects, which, looking at what this team's done so far with their picks in recent years, and Hugo looks like he's off to a promising start right now. Jordan Walsh still isn't playing. Shireman still isn't playing consistently. Garza and Minot, guys they brought in over the offseason as second draft kind of guys, haven't made a major impact so far. So, yes, you'd love to have like a top 10 pick to be able to bring in someone who's you're investing in and developing every single night. But you also have to find the Hausers of the world and the Kornets of the world. And I'm still frustrated not to go there, but to see what Luke's doing out in San Antonio at the position where you need a lot of help. Sherrod, come on.
Sherrod, I think he's right. I think he's valid.
Have you watched him, Sherrod, so far? He's exactly what they need.
He looks good.
Listen, I've seen the discourse around the Celtics team has gotten. Did he leave?
He's not doing it. He's not doing a Luke segment in 2026. I haven't gone there. We're only 4 games in. I know.
Listen, here's the thing. they lost a lot of talent in the offseason. We talked about it. It's, at first it's Tatum and then it's all these other guys. And Luke, to me, is at the top of the list because he fits their new timeline. I do think that Luke Kornet was a connector, was a rebounder, was a guy, he would help them a lot. It's actually kind of scary how much he would help them in this exact.
And he
group.
knew the system. He was sharp. He played well off other guys. I know bits and pieces of how that thing went down and why he ended up on the Spurs and why the Celtics couldn't keep him. I do think they made a legitimate effort money-wise to keep him. I've said it a million times. He got $23 million, give or take, guaranteed from the Spurs. Celtics were in a position to give him about $20 million. But he liked the role he had in San Antonio, the ability to win there. And obviously it's close to where he grew up too. So there were other factors beyond the money, I'm sure, that led to that thing going the way it did. But could you have spent a little more luxury tax money now to have a good player in place when Tatum gets back? Because the one thing I'll keep saying, tank or not this year, you are not in a good position to hit the ground running and contend for a championship when Tatum comes back, whether that's this year or next year, barring you finding some other pieces that can help you from a bench standpoint, from a center standpoint, whatever way you want to look at it. And so that's why I start to get a little frustrated about this year, because it doesn't look like guys are emerging so far. It's a long year ahead for development and all that, but the Luke thing's already getting me a little bit because he could be helping right now and into the future, Sherrod.
My computer does not like Luke.
Yeah.
My computer does not like Luke because the last time you even said his name, it just disappeared. So if I disappear again, Bobby, it is your fault. Just saying.
Luke's a great rebounder too. He would have been a solution out there potentially. Final thoughts. We've been going for an hour and a half on this one. We're back at it tomorrow, so I don't want to go too long here. I'm heading down New Orleans. Noah's probably catching a flight early morning as well. Final thoughts from this one, Noah.
No, I mean, again, I think there were some good stretches in this game, and I've only ever covered a team that was really good, in the last 2.5 years of the Celtics. And I think what you see is that part of what the difference between a good team and a bad team and the records is not always as big as it looks. And we know that because we see teams upset better teams in the standings all the time, right? They have enough to maybe win 1 game or 2 games, but they don't have enough to win 60 games in a season. And so the biggest question to me is whether they can control this defensive rebounding gap that they have, because everybody's talking about it. Everybody's thinking about it. You could tell it's the number one thing on the forefront of everyone's mind. But we also knew it was going to be a problem based on the roster. And I didn't,
We played a cup before you got on here, Noah. Joe was talking about we might not be able to do that. So we have to control other areas, which I find interesting.
Was that from the New York pregame? Postgame? Yeah. He kind of said the same thing today. I think that they know that it's going to come from, part of controlling the defensive rebound, he says, is taking care of the ball. Obviously, that doesn't actually, control the defensive rebounding, but that's kind of what he's getting at, is that there's going to be other things that they can control more. And then I think there's a few box outs. When I rewatched the Knicks game, there were 5 or 6 plays where the guy could have just gotten the rebound, had the only thing on his mind been that rebound, which I know is oversimplifying it because they're also running around on defense trying to get stops and contest and angle, and there's a million things in their mind, but I do think they can get better at it.
Are you going to demand a trade, Noah, if they have a bad year? Tell KC.
No, you guys might demand a trade from me though, because I'm never going to start being super negative. So
Sherrod,
the trade might be the other direction.
They look, it's pretty simple. They have to do a better job of controlling the controllables, the things that they can actually impact. And Joe Mazzulla, he's made it very clear that there are going to be areas where we're just not going to get much better. But there are areas where we can become better, and we have to do a better job. And by me, the Celtics, they have to do a better job in some of those areas around rebounding. They're not going to find Wemby just hanging out there that they can sign for the minimum. It's just not happening. So if you can't literally get more size, or you don't see size that's going to be of value, you got to do all those other things better. You've got to cut down on turnovers. You got to force more turnovers. You've got to shoot the ball better. You've got to have better ball movement. You have to find ways to generate a style and an identity that can help you mask your greatest weakness. I mean, that's what the really good teams do. It doesn't mean they have good players. It just means that they have a good system and they have a good identity that plays to the strengths of that group. And that's, Bobby, as we talked about before Noah came on, this team doesn't have an identity. And until they figure out what that identity is going to be and should be, it's going to be difficult for them to implement a system that plays to that if you don't know what that is.
I'm curious when they get to the point where they just say, screw it, we're not going to be able to rebound. Let's put Minot at center. Let's just go small. Let's put as much shooting out there as we possibly can and just run, shoot, score as much as they can and try to win some shootouts. Because I feel like Cade has been decent. We didn't mention him a ton here tonight, but I felt like this was another okay game from him. I feel like his minutes overall have been solid. They missed him a bunch in this game too offensively. So he's hanging in there as a starter. Tillman didn't play for whatever reason, because it's either the offense being so limited. I've said that to Noah a million times. Like, what can he do offensively to stay on the floor? Obviously, it got to a point tonight where they just didn't play him because I don't think he can contribute enough on that end, which is a killer if that's the reason they did that. And then Garza obviously fouled a lot in this game and wasn't super effective. Minot gave them a nice boost. This was a good Minot game. So they're still trying to figure out what they have at center right now. Obviously, this is a solution as well. They could trade Simons for size. I talked about that in my bold predictions, that could be something they want to do if they want to save this season. We'll see if they want to save this season. That tank conversation is going to become a bigger one as they keep losing here. It's early, right? But the more losses they start to stack up here, the less encouraging this is looking. We threw this up earlier here, Noah. They've only made the playoffs 3 times out of the 10 that they've started 0-3. I believe I saw Dick Light tweeted or posted that they've only started 0-4 twice since 1970. So that's obviously what's on the line tomorrow. We will be in New Orleans, Noah and I, heading down for my first time. You've been down there before, I believe, Noah, Sherrod. Any tips for New Orleans? I'm excited for this one.
Lots of good vegan restaurants.
Oh boy.
Are?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
I'll take your word for that, Noah.
I don't know if I'm going to join you on this trip. This might have to be a carnivore one for me, but I'll ask around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing Zion. Base Missy looks like he's going to be back. Derek Queen, who's obviously a rookie they invested a lot in down there. Jordan Poole's hanging out. As well as Trey Murphy, who I really like. That is at 8 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. We'll have a full crew covering that one remote here to start, and then Noah and I will be joining from New Orleans. Looks like Noah's dipping out. Thanks, Noah. And we are as well. Make sure to show some love to our sponsors, Prize Picks. Use code CLNS over there for the football game. About to get started, 50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And, of course, check out Omaha Steaks Patriots at checkout to get $35 off your order at omahasteaks.com. Terms apply. And subscribe to all of our coverage here on CLNS Media. Patriots guys had that win covered over on the Patriots Press Pass channel. Bruins season continuing over on Bruins Rinkside. And Noah's got the WNBA covered over on WNBA Today. We will see you tomorrow night. For now, Celtics fall to 0-3 and move on to New Orleans tomorrow. For Noah Dalzell, Sherrod Blakely, I'm Bobby Manning. Good night. Peace.